For months, the official line held steady. 3 Atlas would sweep past Mars, throw us a beautiful coma, then fade into the dark. The universe rarely offers harmless without purpose. Webb took a harder look, the math twitched, the track tightened, and a quiet phrase escaped closed rooms. 3 Atlas might hit Mars. This is not a comet story only. It is a story of precision. Gas bursts that tick like minutes. Vectors that look like steering rather than drift. The deeper the analysis goes, the less natural the motion appears. 3 Atlas is not wandering. It is choosing. The red planet sits where the aim line ends. The first detection on July 1st looked ordinary from a distance, a bright smear racing inward at nearly 87 kilometers per second relative to the Sun. At that speed, the Earth-to-Moon gap shrinks in less than 80 minutes. Speed was not the shock. Behavior was. Comets fragment or settle as they enter the inner system. This one gained speed by a whisper that became a habit. Its flight path cinched inward. The coma doubled in brightness within weeks. Ultraviolet spiked. Carbon dioxide poured out at unheard-of rates. Rocks do not gather themselves like this. Guidance systems do. Then Webb caught the heartbeat. Not messy jets from sunlight chewing ice. Not random. 17-minute intervals. Clean. Repeating. Gemini South confirmed. JPL ran the models. A near miss slid toward a near strike. The revised pass skimmed at 1.95 million kilometers from Mars, thin as thread on a cosmic loom. Simulations showed that a modest burst of extra velocity could curl the line into a direct hit. A breath of thrust might redraw a world. Natural bodies vent. They do not align their thrust with an orbital plane and keep doing it on schedule. Yet here the vectors pointed directly along Mars's lane. Between September 19th and 30, any single outburst could be decisive. Observation changed flavor. We were no longer measuring luck. We were watching aim. Doubt did not vanish, but it softened. Avi Loeb and his team stepped into the gap and wrote what others only implied. 3 Atlas may be engineered. The data began to nod. Radar returns from Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and Goldstone came back with the hard ring of metal rather than the soft smear of ice and dust. Inside voices called the echoes unlike anything on record. Amateur images under deep exposure showed 3 thin green needles riding near the object, pulsing in lockstep with the gas vents. 3 beams beside 3 Atlas. Coincidence has a limit. Loeb's scenario read like design. A deliberate strike or a delivery. A payload seeded into the vapor. Probes or spores or something stranger. Mars not as accident but as chosen receiver. Consider the energy ledger. The mass sat around 10 billion tons. The closing speed near Mars hovered near 57 kilometers per second. An impact at that scale would pour out more than 2 million megatons. A crater 60 kilometers wide and 5 deep. Debris tossed into orbit, some fragments flung onto long paths that cross Earth years later. The loss would not be rocks alone. Rovers and orbiters, decades of climate records, and life detection experiments would be erased in a flash. Planetary defense teams at ESA, Roscosmos, CNSA, and JAXA began quiet talks not about swatting a comet, but about protocols for an object that looks like a vehicle. Mars remains our mirror for life. Subsurface brines, permafrost vaults, dormant microbes perhaps, and impact cracks vaults we have never opened. If 3 Atlas carries complex organics or synthetic biology in its tail, the mixing becomes a planetary experiment we did not consent to. Panspermia turned backward. Mars as incubator. As closest approach drew near, Webb locked on again. Official statements thinned. Leaks whispered of synthetic polymers in the spectra and carbon nanotube-like structures woven through the gases. Isotopic ratios in carbon and hydrogen that do not match anything local. Signatures of design where cold chemistry should suffice. Agencies formed emergency groups to understand what time permitted. Then the communication cadence from Mars developed gaps. Perseverance and Tianwen-1 feeds showed holes. Questions hit walls. A single phrase trickled out of a private memo. Impact protocol initiated. What that means remains unclear. Some believe Earth switched on a network of encoded pings to every asset near Mars. If the object can hear, we just spoke. If it can think, it knows we have noticed. Elsewhere, a team at SETI tried reading the path itself. They translated trajectory and timing into binary, compressed it the way we package deep space messages, then searched for structure. Out came repeating intervals that map to atomic numbers: 6, 8, 14, 26. Carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, the bones of life and machine. Prime sequences threaded inside. Recursions we use to prove we can count. The path might be a message in motion. If it strikes, that is one symbol. If it misses, another. A sentence written by timing. Maps added a chill. The tightened corridor crossed above Elysium Planitia, a young plane with symmetrical scars. Spirals, concentric rings, flows that echo Fibonacci ratios. At the center of a perfect circular basin sits a patch of crystalline silicates with odd refractive behavior. Under sunlight, they blink faint infrared at regular beats. Once filed as curiosity, now read as beacon. A rendezvous point, perhaps? If so, who placed it and when? Webb then noticed a second darkness, not debris and not tethered. A shadow trailing at a fixed fraction of an astronomical unit, moving in perfect unison. Radar saw nothing. Infrared did not warm it. Photometry showed a clean drop in light, a shape that traced a perfect orbital relation. Companion, drone, or field, the effect was the same. Perhaps 3 Atlas is not sole actor. Perhaps it carries something that hides in its wake. Timing lined up with old harmonics. The object's alignments with Sun, Earth, and Mars landed on resonance dates that ancient skywatchers loved. Equinoxes, rare cycles that rise every 54 years. The last time interplanet geometry came close during a comet pass, Siberia burned under an airburst and left forests flattened without a crater. Tunguska is not proof, it is a reminder. Random rarely respects calendars. A boundary shifted from orbital mechanics to minds. At Princeton, researchers exposed volunteers to a light curve that matched the 17-minute pattern. Brains in separate rooms synchronized their waves as if tuned by the same metronome. This was not placebo or rumor. If a distant object can nudge human rhythms across walls, what happens when the signal grows stronger? Perhaps 3 Atlas is not rock or ship only. Perhaps it is a moving thought. A seed of attention that travels as pattern. A message you do not merely receive. A message you join. Archaeoastronomers overlaid the track onto ancient maps. A serpent of fire bending near the sun, then diving toward the red god, appears in codices and carvings from Babylon to the Andes. A Tiwanaku stone shows 4 lines fanning from Mars after a descent. Modern dispersion models for a Mars strike produce similar fans. Prophecy or memory, take your pick, the geometry rhymes. Mars began to answer in its own voice. The ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter recorded xenon isotope spikes rising from Cerberus Fossae. Seismic ticks amplified. Subsurface layers warmed by 3 Kelvin. Magnetometers detected a faint structured pulse that repeated every 17 minutes, the same cadence as the tail. The planet was humming before the visitor arrived. Webb's timing sequence abandoned simple spin entirely. 7 pulses, pause, 3, pause, 13, then onward. Plot the numbers and a Fibonacci spiral curls out. The geometry of storms, shells, and DNA. Codebreakers whispered the same conclusion. The countdown may point to resonance rather than collision, a lock turning through cycles toward a single click. Then Olympus Mons answered. Low-frequency tones rose from beneath the mountain and were caught by several orbiters. The waveform mirrored the spiral Webb saw near perihelion. Not echo, response. Old data brightened with new meaning. A faint heat print under Utopia Planitia from Mars Odyssey years ago returned sharper and larger. Its outline matched a subtle glyph near the D and M fossae, a descending spiral meeting a circle with 2 planets aligned at contact. It reads like a stored instruction set. Mars Express then watched the dust south of Noctis Labyrinthus rearrange itself. 2 concentric ovals lifted as if pushed from below. Over 4 hours, they grew into a slanted eye tilted at 23.5 degrees. Earth's axial tilt. A mirror or a stare? It does not matter. Mars signaled that it knows our angle. We thought we were tracking a comet. We were watching a ritual. The object did not simply pass, it performed. Planets it touched answered with whispers. Mars did not only react, it remembered. As if this scene ran once before and the script waited in the dust for the cue. 3 Atlas now moves into the final mark, not to erase a world, perhaps to complete a pattern. The change that follows may not carve a crater. It may carve our certainty. What happens next is already touching us. Telescopes and transmitters, arguments and jokes, all folded into a conversation we did not realize we had joined. 3 Atlas did not come from Mars, it came for attention. The question is not whether Mars will be struck. The question is whether we already have been.